Hey everybody, today we're going to discuss the NBA draft. Who are the winners, who are the losers, and as well examine just what was some GMs thinking. Talk to you soon. Matthew Maurer with On Fire. Today is kind of my review day. I'm going to take a look at the NBA draft that just passed and say who are the winners, who are the losers, and more importantly, what are some GMs thinking with these picks? It was a eventful night. I can't really say I was shocked by the first round picks. But let's be honest, there were definitely some guys who slid, and there were definitely some guys who got a boost in their stock. Particularly, the first three picks went as I pretty much thought they would. Wiggins, Parker, Embiid. Where it really started to get dicey for me was Dante Exum dropping to 5. I thought maybe that Philadelphia would think about him at the 3. Joe Embiid is a home run pick. Again, anytime you take a big man with injury, history, and hasn't been playing the game as long as he has, you're taking a risk. But it's an educated risk, and it's a good one. Aaron Gordon going 4, I just don't get. I watched him all year at Arizona, and yeah, there were moments of brilliance, but I mean, I don't see the number 4 type talent that apparently the Orlando Magic GM did. I'm just at a loss of words for that one. Marcus Smart, Julius Randle, man, those picks were tremendous for those organizations. I mean, to get Marcus Smart at 6 is just beyond ridiculous. You're talking about a guy who last year people were talking about a top 3 pick. You get him at 6. Definitely got his stock lowered this past season from some of the incidents that happened on court, like at Texas Tech. Julius Randle, if you would have told me you could get Julius Randle at 7 the beginning of the year or even the middle of the year, you could have sold me for a penny. I just couldn't believe that, Julius Randle fell that far. I'm guessing some of it is to do with his foot. Some of it is to do with, just people weren't impressed, but the offense that he produced at Kentucky. Nick Stauskas, Vonleh weren't really surprise picks. Elfrid Payton wasn't really a surprising pick, but I tell you, the thing that Philly had better start realizing is, in Michael Carter-Williams, you have a very good point guard for the future. And clearly, he didn't know what was going on, and more importantly than that, he was kind of upset, you could tell. He even pondered if he was going to be in Philadelphia. So they got to start communicating with some of these guys that they plan on keeping for a while, because I understand that Peyton was trade bait now, but the point is they didn't let their guy know that's playing in the same position, and that should have been handled more properly. Out of the rest of the first round, I mean, I didn't really see anything that was. Obviously, Gary Harris falling to 19 is another guy that I thought could have been a top 10 pick. I think the height scared a lot of people. He measured it, I think it was 6'2.5" at the combine. And this is where it gets interesting, because the Toronto Raptors take a guy that no one knew. I mean, this guy, and the player in question is Bruno Caballo. This is a guy that was on par in terms of, like, I haven't seen this happen in NBA since '95 when Martin Mearset was drafted, and people were like, "Who?" That is the equivalent of what this guy is. I mean, to me, it baffles the mind how you have all this talent left on the board and you swing for the home run fences for a kid that people say is the Brazilian Kevin Durant. I mean, come on. The Brazilian Kevin Durant? I mean, he plays in the Brazilian league, which is basically fast break, fast-paced offense. They don't even believe in a half-court set down there. If you went down to Brazil and post up, they look at you like you were crazy because they don't post up really. It's a fast break, fast-paced offense. That's what type of league this is. And there's no knock on the Brazilian league. But I'm just being honest. This is what it is. You got guys like Leonardo Barbosa, who put up 28 points a game in that Brazilian league. This guy puts up 5 points a game. No, that's not very Kevin Durant-like. Sorry. And this goes to that mindset that I talked about when GMs fail. When they go after the clone that reminds them of a current dominant player. We saw this with Dirk. You know, with the European guys that got the extra push because they were tall and they could shoot. You know, we saw this in the Michael Jordan years where you had guys that just were high flyers and people say, oh, well, he's like Jordan. Didn't happen. You know, we've seen this with, you know, tall players, you know, with the Yao Ming syndrome, where you get Yao Ming and then all of a sudden you got Slavko Vranic who's terrible. You know, we've seen this before. This is nothing new. And the thing that kills me with this philosophy is it's a fool's bet. It's a fool's bet. You just don't do much when you get these kind of picks. I wish the young man luck. I just don't see how he's going to do anything in the future. Moving on, I can't say anybody else really surprised me. Well, one other player. The Thunder picked Josh Heistis from Stanford, and again, this is another guy that, you know, I get it. I'm not one to question the Thunder. Sam Presti has enough currency that I'm really not going to question, but I'm still waiting for the Andre Robertson pick from Colorado that he made a couple years ago. I'm still waiting for that pick to pan out. But again, you know, Sam Presti has done more genius things in the draft than most GMs right now in the league, so I'm not going to really question that. However, I will say I'm shocked that he went in the first round because I thought he had a second round grade at best. Let me say the one true highlight of the night was, you know, Isaiah Austin being picked up by the NBA as a grand gesture, as kind of a ceremonial pick. Adam Silver, you know, what more can you say about the guy? I mean, he seems to get it. He seems to have a real building connection with the players. And more importantly, Isaiah Austin is probably the first NBA player in modern history to be recognized by the NBA as a kind of a honorable draftee. And as anybody who's followed our site, we have numerous honorable draftees from the 50s and the 60s. This is a guy who is, to my knowledge, the first official honorary draftee. I just thought it was a grand gesture. For people who don't know, Isaiah Austin, you know, was diagnosed with Marfan's syndrome literally days before the draft. I don't know if I thought he'd go in the first round, but he was definitely a guy that I felt would get fetched in the second round. I really hope everything works well for the kid. I mean, by all intents and purposes, he seems like a great kid, great family, and you know, really, really brought a little tear to my eye to see a young man genuinely touched by hearing his name called. It was a great moment. Can't get enough of those moments in the draft. In the second round, you know, I thought guys like Joe Harris went too high. KJ McDaniels, Clee Anthony early. They should have been first rounders to me. Definitely steals there in the second round. Jeremiah Grant, Glenn Robinson III. These guys are potential, you know, second round steals. Really liked the Denver Nuggets selecting Nikola Jokic. He's a tremendous player for his age. I think the upside is tremendous with that guy. Great pick, and everybody knows I'm not usually a fan of international prospects, but that's a great pick there. Obviously, Walter Tarvez, who the Atlanta Hawks took, I thought was a great pick in the second round. Another international prospect. I spoke about it on Twitter. I'll speak about it again. To see Cameron Barstow get drafted 49th by the Chicago Bulls, I got to be honest, I'm a little indifferent to. The reason being is I sometimes wonder if sometimes GMs pick kids that are from foreign countries that play 4-year college because they think they're going to go back to those countries and play pro ball. And that's probably more true than false, but I got to be honest with you. Barstow, I don't see how he goes before a Kem Birch or some of the other guys that were available still. I mean, I just don't see how Kem Birch doesn't get selected over Cameron Barstow, but I guess beauty's an eye of the beholder, and I guess no one liked Kem. Alec Brown was a great pick, one of the first few picks of the Wisconsin Green Bay. I don't think they've had anybody since in the first 2 rounds since the 70s. Other than that, some Semye Christian from Xavier, another great pick. Xavier Thames is a guy that I think is going to be better than people think. The draft was surprising in the depth of it, and also the amount of reaches that were done with some guys. In particular, Luis Labourier. I don't see the beauty in this guy, as a prospect. I thought that was a reach. Nemanja Dangubic is another kid that was selected by the Philadelphia 76ers, who I thought got more credit for being able to dunk a basketball than actual skills that translate into the NBA. A lot of times when people see international prospects doing Americanized plays, or should I say style of play, it gives these guys a boost sometimes. We saw it with Alexandro Pavic in 2003. This is kind of the same guy. I don't really think he'll do much. I think he was a reach as a pick. The international prospects, I can't really say other than Bruno Caballo and Luis Labourier and Naaman Dangubic. I didn't really see many guys that I wouldn't take that were international prospects. I thought that there wasn't really bad reaches other than those guys I just mentioned. But for the most part, I thought that the NBA nailed the international market. And I have to follow up with something I said on Twitter on draft night that some people took offense to, or some people thought I was being a little too harsh. Masai Ujiri, the Toronto Raptors GM, he took a player in Bruno Caballo that people gave me a little bit of a roughing of, because I basically said that Masai doesn't seem to understand the draft. And listen, he doesn't. And let me tell you why he doesn't. You got a guy like Jerry West, and Jerry West made some peculiar picks in the 90s. anybody who has remembers in I think it was '94, he made a huge play. It was 95, I believe. Made a huge run to get Frankie King from Western Carolina. Was in love with him. I guess he saw another Sedell Threet that he had to get. He had to have that player. They particularly went out and got a draft pick just to grab the kid. They took him in the second round. And no one. With Eldon Campbell, that was considered a reach at the time. Devin George, he's always been known as a risk taker in the draft. But here's the thing. R.C. Buford as another GM who's maybe taking guys that people weren't too keen on. Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili was a guy that came out of nowhere. He played like in the second division of the Italian league, and people thought it was a reach for him. Tony Parker a little bit less so. I think everybody thought Tony Parker had a first round grade. I put Tony Parker as a first round grade, but to the outside people who don't watch the draft as much as I do and the players, Tony Parker was considered a bit of a reach. Manu Ginobili, another guy who just people were like, who? But no one knew about him. So certain guys, Sam Presti, another one in Oklahoma City Thunder, you give a little bit of leniency to. You say you might question their draft pick, but you're not going to really hold them to it because they've done far better in the draft than anybody, including what you could do. So you kind of say, hey, it's Sam Presti or it's R.C. Buford or it's Jerry West. I'm not going to say too much about it. That's kind of the mindset you have because you may say, I don't get it, but you're not going to really cross that line of criticism because you know that this guy has a record of greatness in his draft picks. So you just say, you know what, I'm not going to question it. Kind of like, but then, you had those David Kahns of the world when he was the GM at Minnesota, where you just say, how the hell is this guy a GM? Masai Ujiri is, to me, he's on that dangerous fence between David Kahn and Jerry West. You cannot expect leniency and excuses if your pick doesn't pan out. And people may say, what are you talking about? I watched, him talk to the press after the draft was over, and he said, I really don't care what people think about my draft, and da-da-da-yada, we're just trying to go for the best player, da-da-da-da. Bull crap. You're not going to convince me that Bruno was the 20 best player on the draft board. You're not going to convince me of this. R.C. Buford said a great line when somebody interviewed him about after the draft about Kyle Anderson, and they said, was he number one on your guys' board? And R.C. Buford said, well, Jabari Parker and Andrew Wiggins were up on that board. And everybody laughed, and that's the truth. You draft based, it's beauty based on where you draft, but you're not going to convince me that the 20th pick came around and the Toronto Raptors jumped with glee and said, yo, let's get Bruno Caballo because he's the 20th best player. I don't believe that crap for nothing. And he says he doesn't care who believes in his picks and da-da-da-da. You better get your mind right. Because, the rest of the basketball world don't got to care. But those Toronto Raptors fans, the ones that pay your salary, the ones that go out and they get those season tickets, you better hope they believe. Because if they don't believe, guess what? All that talk is just going to be talk because those people are going to not be fans. They're not going to renew their tickets. And guess what? You'll be out of a job because when you take that haughty position of, hey, I know what I'm doing and don't dare question me. No, you're going to get questioned. A, because you're a GM, so anything that goes on with that team, you're going to be questioned about. And B, because you decided to take a player that not even any mock on the universe had And more importantly, very few NBA teams had Bruno on that board. And they can talk about basketball without borders, and they can talk about how the Houston Rockets saw him. They can talk about all that crap all they want. But no one was going to take him in the first round. No one was going to take Bruno in the first round. I don't believe that for a minute. And if you really felt he was going to go that high, why didn't you trade up? If he was so on people's boards, why didn't you trade up? Because ain't no one going to take him in the first round. I don't care what you say. Show me a team that says they'll take him in the first round, and I'll show you a team that got paid. Because ain't nobody going to sit there and say, oh, yeah, we'll take Bruno Caballo in the first. Yeah, we're going to take him in the first. No, you weren't. No, you weren't. Nobody was. Nobody was. And listen, if Masai wants this, credit, okay, get your credit, but understand, we not living in the world that you take into account what you've done, and we're supposed to sit there and say, oh well, okay, let's not talk. We can't say anything about him because of look at what he's done. That doesn't work this way, man. It doesn't work this way. I mean, listen, I'm still waiting for Choo Choo Madubum to work out, the player that averaged a triple single, not a triple double, not a triple quadruple. No, this guy averaged a triple single in the NBDL. I'm talking about 1 point, 1 block, and 1 rebound a game. I'm still waiting for him to do something. It ain't gonna happen. When you take these weirdo picks, if they don't pan out, your credit as a GM goes down each time. And it becomes then that every time you make a pick, it had better be a pick that people agree with, acknowledge, or even can understand somewhat of the logic. Because if you come out of left field with a player and that player doesn't pan out, you're going to be held to it. A, because of your haughty attitude, and B, because you took a first round pick on him. You took a second round flyer on him, no one would have said a word. You took a first round flyer on the kid. He gets a guaranteed 3 to 4 year contract. And more importantly than all that, you're now trying to force him into the league. This guy ain't ready. No matter what he says, he ain't ready. He is not ready. Listen, I know what the Brazilian league is for. I know what they're about in the Brazilian league. And if you're going to convince me that this kid is ready, well then guess what? Why wasn't he ready in Brazil? I mean, it's Brazil. This ain't Spain, which is littered with prospects and senior players and, fringe NBA players. This is Brazil. Brazil is the equivalent of the basketball talent of a JUCO college, if not less than that. And we're sitting here and again, I know some people are going to say that's BS. No, it's not BS. Brazil ain't littered with prospects, because those prospects in Brazil, guess where they go, guys? Spain. Okay? He wasn't in Spain. And don't get me wrong, Nene Hilario, guys like that, Leonardo Barbosa, those guys have proven themselves NBA worthy. But here's the thing that people don't understand. When those players got drafted and started to do well, guess the dynamic that changed. Brazil started to get scouted by Spain, and those prospects started to transition into the ABC, the ACB, which is arguably the second best league in the world. So Anderson Virgil goes to Spain. Thiago Splitter goes to Spain. The best players in Brazil often go to Spain. I mean, that's how it goes. You're gonna tell me this guy is cut from the cloth of Leonardo Barbosa and somehow Spain missed him? I don't believe that Spain missed him. I believe that no one sees the Kevin Durant that you so-called covet. I could be wrong. And then listen, if Masai Ujiri gets a guy that goes on and is a really good player or an above average player, he's gonna get all the credit in the world. He'll get all the credit. Because he certainly got all the credit for the turnaround the Toronto Raptors had this year, and then it weren't all his moves. Some of those were Colangelo's moves. So he's going to get all the credit. So people, he's talking about, like I want to hear his little wine story and somehow, I should feel bad for him because he's getting picked on. No, I don't feel bad for you. I don't. You're an NBA GM. You're a grown man. This is your job. Okay, you're gonna get the credit if it goes right. And by all means, you take a first rounder on a guy who wasn't on nobody's first round, you're going to get all the blame if it goes wrong. And that's the facts. And if Masai doesn't understand that, I don't know what to tell him. I'm his best friend right now. A lot of these other people in the media who don't want to be real honest about picks because they don't want to forfeit, being honest with having access to those teams. I don't follow these teams, I'm not hired by Sporting News and CBS and ESPN, so I don't have to have relationships with these teams. See what I'm saying? I'm your best friend, dude. I'm telling you, if you're going to take these type of guys, by all means take them, but they better be able to play, because if they can't play, you're going to get all the blame. You're going to get all the blame, because that's how it works. It does not work in the NBA that you don't get blame. You're going to get the blame, and you should. You should. You're the GM. You pulled the strings. So that's enough of my rant. All in all, it's a good draft. I think you're going to have some, great role players long term. I don't know if this draft has franchise talent. I'd say the franchise talent, I think you got Wiggins, Parker, and then with the outside chance of Joel Embiid being a franchise player. Ton of great role players. Out of the international class, I think Alexandro Gentile is going to be a good pick. Vasilije Micic, another great pick. Damian Ingles, another great pick. Walter Tarvez, a great pick. Dario Saric, another great pick. For the most part, the international market was very well upheld. And as I said earlier, Nikola Jokic is another great player that I think is a really great pick at that slot. And then Kyle Anderson falling to the San Antonio Spurs. I mean, NBA, are you just purposely trying to help the San Antonio Spurs? I mean, this is crazy. If you would have told me Kyle Anderson would go 30th, I wouldn't believe you. I would take that bet to the bank and get ready to cash in, because I wouldn't believe he'd fall to 30, and he did. And I got to be honest with you, the rich get richer. They just, you give them picks like this, and then you wonder why they have a deep bench. I'll tell you why they have a deep bench, because they get picks like this. I mean, this is a genius pick. R.C. Buford, again, gets all the credit for making a great pick. Mitch McCary, again, Sam Presti, again, showing the genius that he does with the draft. You get a guy that really has a lot of upside. They really suffered when their big man went down in the playoffs, and because of that, they got Mitch McCary, who I think is going to be a great fit for them. And it just goes to show you that, certain teams that continue to have success in the NBA build themselves through the draft and understand the process. And that's why you can see why Sam Presti worked with R.C. Buford. I'm not sold on the 76ers GM. I do like the talents he brought in. He does have some resemblance of what the draft's supposed to be like. I give him a way better grade than I've seen people in the press do. I think Philadelphia is doing, really strong things. And of course, as I talked about earlier, Yusuf Nurkic is basically Dalibor Bargaric a few years ago. I don't think you're going to hear much from this kid. Could be wrong again. I mean, that's just my opinion. It's not gospel, but I just don't think he's a great player. But again, that's why we do this, isn't it? We do this so that we can get ridiculed later if we're wrong about a player, and we do it so we can say, hey, I was right about that player. So, I'm okay with that. After that, I mean, we got to start looking on the 2015 NBA draft, which I'll have a mock-up later. I have an interview with Mike Tillery of the Starting Five. It was a tremendous interview. Really appreciate him taking the hard work and the time to sit down and have a really good conversation. I'll make sure I post links on that. Again, thanks so much all this year for your guys' support. It's been tremendous. Appreciate the Twitter conversations. Whether you agreed with me or you disagree with me, I appreciate you guys taking the time to talk, and look forward to next year. And we're going to continue to talk NBA draft history. This is what we do. Talk to you later. Matthew Maurer signing out.